You need to consider how to sort of put yourself in the best position to win financially. Right? We don't want to be stuck in these three things, because back to zeros is just, you'll just keep going back to zero, and you're never going to move forward. Right? Too hard is just too hard. You throw it up in the air, and 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years goes down the line. You blink and suddenly it's gone. You wonder what the hell just happened. Right? And the nest egg builders just become really, really scared, and we don't necessarily want to be in that place. We want to be empowered financially, right? So how do we do that? Enter, pay yourself first. If there are any questions, feel free to fire them at me along the way. I've got a few slides for this presentation. So what I might do is I'll cater it for where everyone's at in the room, so that we can basically skip through a few things if necessary. Broken pool, aren't we all? So I guess this presentation is about kind of getting you out of that broken pool kind of mindset, and to show you a few little tips and tricks and just strategies and tactics that a lot of people use. I personally use, and I help my clients use them. So it's about kind of providing you with as much information that's actually valuable and practical, so that you can actually implement them ideally post this presentation, right? So quick disclaimer, the typical disclaimer for all financial professionals: this is all general information only, not to be taken as personal advice. So tonight we're going to be talking about a new way to budget. So cash flow strategies. How do you kind of put yourself in a position to win with your cash flows? Talk about super, property, and just open it up for Q&A. But if you have any questions along this presentation, please feel free to fire them at me. Happy to kind of go over anything, really. Yep. So who are we? What do we stand for? So I run a couple of businesses. One's Plenitude Wealth, Plenitude Lend. I originally came from AMP, got out of AMP because it wasn't quite for me. I'm sure you would have heard about the Royal Commissions and all that kind of stuff. So that was about 6 years ago when I got out. Started Plenitude Wealth off the back of running a different business called Alps Network a few years ago. It just wasn't quite right for me either. I felt that we needed something more to attract the right kinds of clients and the right kinds of young people to attract in the industry. So after I read this book, I thought to myself, well, he's trying to create something big. What am I doing? I'm helping clients get wealthy. I'm sort of building my net wealth. That's not really enough, so I needed something a little bit bigger than that. So we figured, well, why don't we create a community that aims towards giving back to the wider community kind of thing. And how we do that is through increasing financial literacy across Australia. And our goal is to educate 1 million people before our 10-year mark. We're 3 years into it. So we've educated about 34 or so thousand people so far. So I'm hoping to get more of the social media videos out there, so that we can get more traction, to spread the word, just increase financial literacy. Because what we're trying to do is plant the seed of philanthropy. The way we see it is, if we can couple wealth with philanthropy, like making a difference through supporting causes that we believe in, I think we're on a winner. So one of the key missions for the business is to create a community of multi-millionaire philanthropists, and part and parcel of that is to increase financial literacy. So we specialize in structure and strategy. We eat our own cooking, and we make sure that we practice what we preach, essentially. A little bit about myself. So I came from science, and I found myself talking to all the scientists here at UQ about their finances, and I thought to myself, okay, I think I might need to make a change. It wasn't quite my passion. I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't something I was obsessed about. I found myself doing a deal, like a property deal, doing a quick renovation, essentially getting a result that outperformed both our salaries, my wife and I's salaries at the time. And I thought to myself, oh, I'm onto something here. I think, g'day, all good. I'm onto something here. I think it's time to have a look at what other options I have, and I'm naturally keen to talk to people and help people. So I figured, well, this is a good fit for me, and see how I go. So essentially, moved from science to finance, and then from there into fatherhood. So yeah, so what I pride myself on is to kind of break things down to as simple as possible, simple building blocks, and build towards what you're trying to achieve into the future. And these are my three little girls, two of which you know very, very well. The third one you will know very, very soon. Thank you very much for taking care of them. So we're very, very grateful. So hence why we're here and trying to add as much value to you guys as possible. So next step. So the ideal starting position with anything in life, in my opinion, is to set yourself a particular goal, right? So you know where point A is. Ideally, set yourself some goals around your time, health, and wealth. So these are the key three factors that I found most people use as excuses to not do the stuff that they want to do in life, right? So, so it's not just about wealth. It's about actually taking care of your time and most importantly, your health, because obviously if you don't have health, you don't really have much. Right, so ultimately, it's about setting yourself some short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals for time, health, and wealth, and make sure that you make base all of your decisions in the middle of this Venn diagram here, because that makes every single decision in your life a hell of a lot easier. It becomes like your North Star, right? So if you can base everything on that, it'll make the decision making a hell of a lot easier. A lot of people sort of are in two minds about their stage in life. I like to kind of show this particular idea right here to just make it a little bit easier. You know, what are the priorities in life? And just base all your decisions on that, right? In terms of goals, what I always tell people to do is consider their lifestyle and financial goals, purely because you want to balance that out. If all you're thinking about is your financial goals, what you tend to do is sort of save up for something big and then spend the whole lot and get back to zero. Who's ever done that? Yes, I'm guilty of that plenty of times. So it's about kind of putting things in place to ensure that you're winning on the lifestyle front and in the financial front. So one of the key things that we'll be covering today is how to sort of create a cash flow management strategy to allow yourself to tick those boxes, right? So the key is to actually write down what your lifestyle and financial goals are, right? Set yourself these targets-ish, right? You know, and then start working towards it. Put a system in place to ensure that you can actually tick that box in 6 months' time, 1 year's time, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years' time, to ensure that you're actually moving forward with your finances. And it starts with understanding what you're trying to achieve in your life, and reverse engineering the ideal outcome. Right? So in terms of finances, what I like to do is set some goals, right? In terms of financial variables, there are two things that we need to kind of consider if we're setting financial goals, right? There's the income goal, and then there's the capital goal. So taking yourself away from work now, what you want to do is consider your finances, like the money that you have in your bank, right? Or what you own minus what you owe. What you ultimately have there is your starting capital, right? What you want to do in your investment career is build up enough capital so that you get a return on investment, right? An annual return on investment to provide you with an income. So that's the end game when it comes to planning for your financial future, right? So what is the capital that you need to produce the income that you want? So that's the first thing that I always get people to consider, right? So this is the end point financially. Everyone's different. There is no right or wrong answer, but I always like to introduce is this particular framework right here, where we set a goal, an income goal for ourselves, a stretch goal, which is what I call the strive goal, survive, strive, and thrive, and a really, really scary goal called the thrive goal, right? Where you're sort of wondering, is this actually possible, right? So what I always tell people is consider, okay, what kind of income would you like to get from your portfolio so that you don't have to work anymore, right? So that's one of the main ways to become financially free, right? So if you've got a portfolio, if you've got a bunch of capital providing you with return on investment, i.e. an income, you can pull the plug on work, or you can go part-time if you love what you do, or you can keep working full-time because you really, really do love what you do, and you're there for the right reasons, not because you're forced to, right? So that's the end goal. So consider, what are the three numbers that comes to your mind? Now, a good rule of thumb with the income is to start with your yearly expenses, right? So the bottom of the rung is the yearly expenses. The top of the line, as a good rule of thumb, is what your gross income is, your salary before tax, right? So consider those two numbers right now, have a think about it, And as an initial goal, write down what feels okay as an initial income goal from your portfolio, right? So it could be $40,000, $50,000, $100,000. Everyone's different, right? Couples in the room, you might add both salaries up and basically find out what your initial goal is, your survive goal. Strive goal, you add an extra $20,000 to $50,000, maybe $100,000, depending on how ambitious you are, right? So everyone's different, right? So you just got to kind of play around with these numbers. So it allows you to have a point B, a goal, a stretch goal, and a scary goal. Third one is the scary goal, add $50,000 to $100,000, maybe even more, depending on where you are, how you feel, and how ambitious you are, right? So now, ideally, if you've done this exercise, you've got 3 particular income numbers, right? And let's hypothetically say it's 50,000, 100,000, and 150,000, just for ease of mathematics for me, right? And the capital that you'd need on a 5% return on investment, right? Capital to produce that income that we were just talking about is multiplied by 20. So 50,000 times 20 is what? 1 million, right? So 100 times 20, 2 million. 150 times 20 is 3 million. So those are pretty sizable numbers. But I'm going to show you how you can actually build towards it, and it's actually quite doable, right? You just have to be consistent, you just have to be patient, right? And you just have to stop buying the lottery tickets, that's all. Right? Yeah, and betting on Melbourne Club. So the key 3 things that you need to consider every single year as an investor, right, is how do you save more money? How do you reduce your taxes so that you can invest better, right? Because in an ideal world, you save more money to put it towards your lifestyle and financial goals. Your financial goals will have one investment part in it, right? Not all of it, some of it, right? A percentage, ideally. And then the taxes that you have, within the percentages that we're going to be talking about later, you can put a percentage towards your lifestyle and a percentage towards your investment. The key is to work with percentages, because as human beings, we tend to kind of screw ourselves up when it comes to dollars and numbers, right? If you work with percentages, it takes away decision factor fatigue, right? Where you kind of overanalyze things and you get paralysis through analysis, right? Very common disease amongst us Australians, right? So the key is to consider all of these 3 things and ask yourself, how do you make it better on a year-by-year basis, right? A new way to budget, right? The key here is to understand this particular thing right here called lifestyle creep, right? As lifestyle increases, income typically increases, and most people are on this 45-degree angle where they get their money in, they've got a massive hole in their pocket, all gone until the next paycheck, right? We've all been guilty of this at some stage of our lives. Hopefully, it doesn't happen for the rest of your life, right? So I'm going to show you how to change things to ensure that your lifestyle and financial goals are being met, basically, right? So, like I said, all savings directed toward lifestyle and financial goals. Invest as much of it as you can and track your cash flow. Understand the pain points and kind of work with it, right? It's an adaptable system. It doesn't have to be set and forget, and you don't have to kind of feel the pain. But I do like a little bit of discomfort when it comes to these things, because with discomfort comes growth, right? It's a massive skill set to be able to lower your lifestyle costs, right? So if you can play around with that thing and understand what is your lowest point, what I like to call it is the minimum viable lifestyle, right? What is the minimum viable lifestyle cost for yourself? If you know that particular number, you know you've got that reference point, you've got that tool in your toolbox that you can pull out when things are starting to get tight, or when you feel that, you know, it's time to get your finances back on track again, right? Very important point. So what is lifestyle creep? Like I mentioned before, it's this 45-degree angle. As the income grows, lifestyle cost grows, and what happens is you tend to kind of wonder what the hell just happened with all of the money that I've earned, right? Because 5 years can go in a blink of an eye.
It's
Question.
that I deserve a better this, now I've got that.
Oh, yes.
Now
yes.
I'm going to upgrade. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it never ends, right? Surgeons are on this, having this issue. Johnny Depp has this bloody issue. Like, he earns millions and millions of dollars and he's just drinking $35,000 bottles of wine because he's got so much cash, but he just keeps spending the whole lot, right? So everyone's got this issue. And we've all been students before. We've all struggled before. And a lot of us forget. A lot of us forget how good we were at saving, or how good we were, or how adaptable we were back in the time when we didn't have that much cash, right? It's a massive skill to sort of anchor that point in your life, because if you can go back to it and change the gradient or the slope of the line from a 45-degree angle to a 30-degree angle, and then use this money right here to put towards your lifestyle and financial goals, back to the same things again and again, right? You live a happier life, right? Because you're ticking off the things that you value most in life. Yeah? Does this make sense? Good. Okay, so ignoring this guy right here, most people are on this particular thing, right? The budget paradigm. Has anyone done a budget before? Yes? Has anyone stayed on it for their whole life? I don't think I've met anyone that stayed on the budget, right? It's very, very difficult. Like, it's restrictive. It's a little bit scary at times. It's definitely uncomfortable, and it's not sustainable, right? What typically happens is your money comes in, first thing, and second thing, it goes towards your fixed and variable expenses, right? And then third thing, with whatever's left, after you've done what you deserve to have in your life, right? You save, right? And what typically happens is you've got three scenarios that happens. The people that go back to zero, right? The people who build up a massive nest egg for themselves that freak out about spending on anything because all they know is to save, right? And then the people who have done back to zeros so many times that it's just too hard, so that they just do the status quo, which is the path of least resistance, what they normally do in their whole lives, what their parents have done, what their friends do. And it may be a good thing, maybe a bad thing, but it's a bit of a roll of the dice, right? We've all got friends who don't have good financial habits. We've all got friends who may have better financial habits, but ultimately these are the people that influence the way you think and the way you spend in your life, right? Especially about money and how you build your careers and your lives, right? So you need to consider how to sort of put yourself in the best position to win financially, right? We don't want to be stuck in these three things, because back to zeros is just, you just keep going back to zero, and you're never going to move forward, right? Too hard is just too hard. You throw it up in the air, and 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years goes down the line. You blink and suddenly it's gone. You wonder what the hell just happened, right? And the nest egg builders just become really, really scared, and we don't necessarily want to be in that place. We want to be empowered financially, right? So how do we do that? Enter, pay yourself first, right? Has anyone heard of this particular paradigm before? This idea? Okay, the idea here is, instead of going for first and second, going to expenses and savings last, the first thing that you need to do is, as soon as money hits your bank account, consider what you value most first, right? Put it towards what you value most first. In an ideal world, pick a percentage, right? The people who are doing really, really well for themselves, pick 40, 50, 60% of their income. Not everyone can do that, right? Some people can go as high as 5%, 10%, 15%, right? Some people can go hard and go 60% because they still live at home, right? Right? So not all of us have got that luxury anymore. I wish I had parents living here with a massive house. Ideally 2 houses. They live in the granny flat and we live in the big one, but it's not the case for us. So you really need to consider what kind of options you have, right? And what kind of percentage are you willing to commit, right? So for example, in my circumstance, it's 30%, right? I have clients who are doing 60, 50, 20%, 15%. Some people can't do 5, right? But doing something is better than nothing. So ask yourself, what percentage do you want to put towards what you value most? And the normal things that people value most is family time, date night, guilt-free shopping, right? Big holiday, overseas holiday, local holiday, right? That kind of stuff. New car potentially, a pool, whatever it may be. All of these things for lifestyle and financial goals. And what you do is you work on that particular percentage that you commit to at the start, right? Commit to a percentage. Throw a percentage up in the air, whether it be 20, 30, 40, 50%, and try and stick to it for 3 months and see how you go, right? Because if you're putting money towards the things that you value most first, you get excited about it, and therefore it's okay to sacrifice a little bit and live within your means within the rest of the percentage that you chose to work with. That's the game. Question.
So would you sort of write down exactly the percentage you're going to put into what each month, and then
Exactly.
even if you're not spending it right then as it accumulates, you know how much.
Exactly. So what happens is that every single circle I've got here is a new bank account. Every single bank will have a zero fee award saver, online saver, something saver, right? That you can open up and squirrel away money in there. Yeah, that's the best way to do it, because you squirrel it away and the key is to automate it. As soon as you get paid, boom. As soon as you get paid, bang, right? So let's say you start with 30 and you've got 10. So for ease of maths, you can go 3% each. But obviously some things are more important than others, right? So as the person who does this exercise, you've got to ask yourself, what's most important to you? Some people, it's about holidays. 10% goes to holidays every single year because it's very, very important. I suggest you have an investment one in there, right? Whether it be 2, 5, 10%, 15, 20%, everyone's different. Depends on how fast you want to get to your financial goals, right? So you've got to balance out your lifestyle and financial goals. And the key to this thing is that it's an adaptable system that you can change every few months if it's too painful in your back pocket, right? Because if you commit to 50%, right, guess what? You're going to have to be making some changes in your life, especially if you've been spending 100% of your income, right? So it depends what sacrifices you're willing to make. But ultimately, it's okay. This is what I found, is it's okay to make the sacrifices because you know that it's only a matter of time until you look at your app, your bank app. Most banks have an app these days, and you will see all of your accounts and you name them according to what you value most. And over time, they will all grow. And let's say one goal is $10,000. Now, that may take you 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, but you know it's growing, and you know at that particular stage in time, you know you've got something to look forward to because it's going to happen. That's what you've planned for, right? Because in life, what I've found is if you don't have anything to look forward to, life becomes pretty dull and boring. And that's when, other things may happen. We don't necessarily want that. So ideally, you want something to look forward to on a year-to-year basis, right? So by putting something like this in place, you can bank on the fact that it's going to happen for you, right? The hardest part is to commit to a percentage, right? And live within your means within here. Because going back to the previous one, what we're doing is lowering our lifestyle expenses. Instead of it being here, we're going to go down a little bit, aren't we? And what's going to happen is over time, as your lifestyle increases, as your income increases, your lifestyle will still increase, but according to the percentage that you've allocated towards, right? So the key is it's not black and white. You don't have to go all in on lifestyle and all in on finance. You can find that happy balance. Because if you can find that sustainable kind of place, you're winning, right? Because you're doing something. A lot of people sit on their hands and get really, really anxious and desperate to get financial results and take too much risk and blow it all up, right? And then the other side of the things is that they just live their lives and live it up within their paychecks. And unfortunately, some people get into debt and they're putting the debt in wrong vehicles, and they're just putting themselves in a hole, right? So what we need to do is get to a position where we've always got investments, we've always got growth in our portfolio, right? So that you're saving for a rainy day and you're building yourself a portfolio that will allow you to replace your income at the back end of your career. It can be 15 years, it can be 10 years, it can be 20 years, it could be 30 years, depending on everyone, right? Everyone's at a different situation. Everyone's got a different circumstance. Question?
Can I just ask you, with income and capital, I should have asked this before, but So the difference between them, so your income is what you get paid every week.
Yes.
Every fortnight. And then your capital, is that
Your savings.
your savings, so that's your, okay, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So within this context, we're talking about income, not from work anymore.
Yeah.
Income from your savings that's producing a return on investment to provide you an income,
Yeah.
right? Because what the sweet spot is, it replaces your whole income, right? Some people, we can't do that, replaces some of your income or 80% of your income, providing you with flexibility to chase after what's important in life, right? So that's the idea, right? So you want a cash flow management system that's automated, that's sustainable, and that provides you with something to look forward to in the future. Because if you don't put something like this in place, you will always revert back to the path of least resistance until something jolts you out of place and gets you moving into something better or worse, right? That's how life works, right? So today I'm hoping to sort of do that little shake and to show you something different to consider, right? And what I can do is I can send you through an Excel spreadsheet on how to do this quite quickly so that you guys can actually successfully make it happen, because this can be quite daunting. And if you guys want, I can do another one, like a proper workshop for this particular purpose only. So this is more of an introduction, yeah. So happy to do that, right? Happy to run that through. Yeah. So your cash flow management system, the key is to list down everything that you want in your life, lifestyle and financial, right? Set yourself some targets, some goals. Talk about your time, health, and wealth goals. Make decisions based on that middle area, right? Out of sight, out of mind. The key is to automate this thing so that every few months you look at your account and you're seeing the accounts, I should say, and you're seeing massive growth. It may not be huge, so maybe a little bit amount of growth, but you know you're working closer and closer towards it. Now, for example, for me, one of my accounts is a buffer account. I'm putting 0.5% of the income towards that, right? And I know it's a 30-year goal. The 30-year goal is to give me 7 years worth of expenses. And okay, I'll just leave it 0.5%, it's hardly anything, but it'll grow over time. And if worst case scenario, I need it for an emergency, I can pull that money out. I know I've got an account squirreled away for that particular purpose, right? So you can ask yourself, what are these accounts that you want in your life, just to make sure that you're putting some money aside consistently. And by creating a new account, it makes it harder for you to pull money out of that account, because it's a pain in the ass. You have to go onto the website and log on and do extra few clicks rather than the tap and go kind of format, which is what most people have, right? If you work with one account and one account only, you can do Excel spreadsheets all you want, but if it's as easy as a tap, all the best laid plans can go to waste, right? So put a barrier in place, make it a little bit harder for yourself, and it increases the likelihood of actually achieving that thing. Yeah. So the next one, super. So why does it matter? Ultimately, super is a structure that allows you to invest in similar assets that you can invest in outside of super. The best thing about super is that it provides you massive tax breaks. That is the best thing about super. Right? So that's how you can grow your wealth a hell of a lot faster than outside of super, because of the tax breaks. Now, the biggest con associated with super is you can't access it until you reach 65, right? 60 for some of us in this room, 65, 70 for others, right? So those are the things that you need to consider. So is it worthwhile putting money in there now or not? It depends on your cash flows. Yes?
Could that be like, you know how you said about your buffer account?
Yes.
Could that be your buffer account?
Well, it depends what you want your buffer account for. Because if you put it in the buffer account, i.e. your super, if you need it for a quick, like a quick solve for a problem in your life, you can't access it. So the answer to that is it depends what your buffer is for. If your buffer is for your retirement, happy days, you put it in there. But if you want access to it, you want to put it into an account that'll allow you access, because super won't allow you access. Right? Until you reach a certain age, right? Okay, quick look at tax, right? So these are your incomes, right? Everyone's incomes. So it ranges from 0 to up to 100, over 180 grand, right? It's 19 cents on the dollar at this bracket here, 32.5 cents at this bracket here, 37 cents at that bracket here, and 45 cents at that bracket there, right? So you've got to ask yourself, well, okay, where do I sit, right? And then ask yourself, well, what's the difference between that and super? Super tax is 15%. Right? So there's a massive difference. So for example, if you're on 32.5%, there's a 17.5 tax savings by putting money into super. I don't know about you, but 17.5% return on a particular strategy is pretty damn good, right? So if you're consistent about a small amount, it can change the trajectory of your retirement, right? Now the key is that small amount better be something that you can let go, because if you're desperate to get it back and you put it into super, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to get it back, right? Something to consider, right? So tax and super is 15, 10% and 0, depending on the circumstances, right? So that's a massive difference relative to the 32.5, 19, 37 and 45, right? Massive difference, 15, 10 and 0. Everyone's different. Right? Most of us here will be on 15%. Yes?
Can you go back to the tax again?
Yes.
I'm really confused.
Yeah.
That confuses me every time I look at it.
Okay, let me walk you through how it works. For the first $18,200 that you earn, you get 0 tax, right? Anything above that, up to $37,000, you're getting taxed 19 cents on the dollar.
Okay, and then anything past 37.
Up to 90 is 32.5. A lot of people will freak you out with the story of if you get a second job, you get taxed 50%. That's not true, right?
It's not.
No, because it all depends on where you land, right? So you get, because you got this tax-free threshold. Have you heard of those words before? Tax-free threshold is 0 to 18,200, yeah? So you tick on that box for your first job. For your second job, you can't tick that box anymore, because you end up getting whacked in the pocket at the back end of the financial year, right? So what happens is they'll assume 45 cents on the dollar because it's your second job, and then you get a big tax return at the back end of the financial year.
We did, honestly.
And that's a great way to save.
We
Yeah,
used to get like
a tax deduction, yes. Yeah, exactly. And you can put that away, it's a way to squirrel money away, right? Yeah, and you can blow it on stuff, or you can just spend it on family stuff. You can spend it on whatever you really want, right? But the idea here is back to the particular things. If you have some percentages in mind, it makes your decision making a hell of a lot easier. Because let's hypothetically say you get $10,000 back for the year, and you went with 30% here. You know that within that 30%, that's your $10,000, right? So all of the $10,000 theoretically should be going towards all of the things that you value most, because those are the things that you value in life, right? It's a really nice exercise to do with a family, because you can all get into it and you can all find out a little bit more about, what you value most, right? And then it allows you to actually lock in these particular goals in your life, yeah? So if you get taxed back, ideally you look at these and you ask yourself, well, how much do I want to spend on a luxury item or an experience that you've really, really wanted? Does that fit in here? And if it doesn't, maybe you put a portion of it and the rest of the portion goes towards here. So it's all flexible, right? The idea is it gives you a template or a skeleton to work with, and use it or not, but it's there to be used, essentially, right? Cool, so back to super. So taxes, essentially you've got your marginal tax rate here. Super tax rate is 15, 10 and 0. 0 is when you hit pension age, right? So, none of us are here at that part yet, but what's going to happen is as soon as you hit 60 and you decide to create a pension account, you can get 0%, or once you retire, you get 0% tax on all of the earnings that you got in super.
Because you've already paid tax on it originally?
No, because it's the government's way to make it easier on you to retire.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And the government wants you to have a large super account, because the government's looking to get rid of the pension at the back end because, aging population, right? Life expectancy is increasing, all of that kind of jazz, right? Common mistakes at super, having multiple super funds without a particular strategy, right? Fees really start to eat into it. Now, some super funds will charge you $200, $500 per year. Some people have had 15 super funds, not realizing it, right? Just dwindling down. So ask yourself, how many super funds do you actually have? Do you know how to look for these things, right? If you don't, ATO Super Search, check it out, right? Money Smart, moneysmart.gov will give you some steps to go look for your lost or previous supers that you may not be aware of. Easy phone call could save you thousands of dollars, right? Worthwhile, right? Retiring, then taking it all out and doing a big spend, right? You heard of grey nomads? A very common thing here in Oz, right? If you've driven, around and about, you've seen a ton of these guys. They love doing this thing. They pull out all of the money and bank on the pension. They spend it on a big car, big caravan, off they go around Australia. They blow the whole lot and then they retire back into an existence of pension, basically. Right? Hoping for the best with the investment choices. Balance sounds about right, right? Who's here that thinks balance sounds about right? Right? You've got to ask yourself, the investment options in your super are there for a purpose, right? And we're going to go through what kind of investment options you have and what to consider as a investor within your super, because your super is your money. That's the key takeaway. A lot of people forget that. Extra con associated with super, capital stuck until you reach preservation age. This is preservation age, 60, right? A lot of rules to stay on top of. Legislation risk. Every time Labor gets in power, it changes. Every time the Libs get in power, it changes. It just changes. Practically every single year it changes. So you got to ask yourself, well, how much money do you want to put towards it? Because it may change, and it may change the strategy that you need to implement, right? The hardest part is when you're just about to retire and then you get caught because you put a strategy in place, a 5-year strategy in place, and suddenly the government changes the legislation and then you're stuck between a rock and a hard place having to work for an extra few years, right? Or if the market drops, so for example, what happened in the GFC, a lot of people were investing too aggressively, they got caught on the downturn, and hey presto, suddenly they have to work another 10 years. Bit sad, but that's the reality of the situation. So you just need to understand what levers you can pull as an investor, because we're all investors, right? That's the key takeaway for this thing. If you've got a superannuation fund, right? If you've got money in there, you are an investor, right?
The difference in the range of the age, preservation age that we should consider, like what's the...
Well, the preservation age is basically the age where you can start pulling money out of super. As of today, 60 is the age where you can go down the path of getting some money out of super.
But what were the other options for the different parties?
So this used to be 55.
Yeah.
Yes, and then they added this. By the time you get to that stage, it'll be 70. I can almost guarantee it, unfortunately. Because the aging population, life expectancy is increasing. Super was made when the life expectancy was around 67, 68. Retirement was 65, right? Sorry, the pension. The pension was made for that particular purpose to cover 3 to 5 to 10 years max. Now retirees are banking on it for 20, 30, 40 years for the really people with good genes and good health who are lucky enough to have that, right? So,
does this rise on which superannuation company you are?
no, all of the rules are the same for all of the supers. Exactly.
So if you're not 60, you cannot take commission.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
But it used to be 50.
It used to be 55.
So for the people that past 55, they can still take, or it changes.
It depends when they were born, right? because they were realizing that people like me were helping clients to save a bucket load of tax, and they're thinking, well, we don't want people to save tax because we want to get our fair share. You know, the government was wanting their fair share, and they changed the rules, unfortunately, right? Because some people can really take advantage of it and actually build a substantial amount of tax savings that they can put in towards their super pre-retirement. So the government's always working out a way to get their clip, basically, right? So it's my job to see that, well, not necessarily stop it. it's to see what rules we're playing with, play within the boundaries of the legal system, and optimize for a good result, basically, right? That's my job, right? Stay away from me. Stay away from me, ATO. So accumulation versus pension space. Pension is when you hit the preservation age, where we can pull out some money from your super. Everyone's in accumulation phase at the moment. So what we're doing is putting as much money into super as possible so that it grows for us. It gets taxed very, very minimally relative to what you would be getting outside of super. That's the power of this thing. So the earlier you get started, the bigger effect it's going to have in the future, right? Tax treatment across entities. Now this is on a marginal tax rate of 32.5 versus super at 8.5 versus pension at 10%. Pension being at 0% tax, right? 15% tax on 8.5 and 32.5% tax on the 10% return. So this is the difference here. You're looking at approximately $100,000 more over a 15-year period if you're investing outside of super under your name relative to the pension, and approximately $80,000 if you're investing in super than outside of super in the same investments that you're making. The key is it's got to be the same, right? So that's the power of tax savings. It makes your money grow faster, right? 15-year projections once more. So this is looking at marginal tax rate of 19 if you're earning up to 18,200, right? And you're investing, right? You're getting 8.1% return, 6.5 if you're getting 32.5% tax, 6.3, 5.5 on the highest marginal tax rate, relative to the super 8.5 and pension at 10%. So it basically tells you that what this graph is telling you is that the more tax you save, the higher the amount that you're going to keep in your pocket. It's really as simple as that. So invest with a little bit of strategy in mind. Invest some in super, invest under your name, potentially create a trust if it's worthwhile. So you just got to do a cost-benefit analysis and make sure that you're saving enough taxes to warrant particular strategies that you're looking to do. Right? Any questions on this? The key takeaway is that the more tax you save, the more money you have in your pocket. It's really as simple as that. So maximizing your super today, you can make contributions with your surplus, store away for future self-income. Whether it be 1%, 0.5%, 2%, 3%, something counts, right? Your employer will provide 9.5% year in, year out. I believe is it 9.5% for everyone here? So for example, UQ employees are getting 17%. So that's huge, right? Massive, right? So you can make pre-tax contributions, tax at 15% instead of your marginal tax rate, up to $25,000 per year, right? And we'll cover that in the next slide, I believe, right? Review your investment risk profile, yeah? Your risk profile will allow you to invest in a strategy that you want, that you're comfortable with, basically, yeah? It's just understanding what are your options, how to structure your portfolio to achieve the result that you want, to lessen the risk if you need to, especially if you're just about to retire, right? Put some strategies in place to ensure that you're doing that. Now, a lot of you will have life insurances in your super. Do you actually need it? Are you overinsured? Are you underinsured? Have a little bit of a review. Have a look. Is it worthwhile keeping it? Don't know, everyone's different. Anyone here looking to buy their first home? Cool, yep. First Home Super Saver Scheme is an option that I always share with my clients who are looking to buy their first home. It's really cool. It allows you to save 15% tax on up to $30,000 currently, right? So that equates to $9,000 if you're a couple. That's a lot of money. That's tax saved, yes.
Does that mean you use your super to contribute in your first home purchase?
Yes,
That?
yes.
Oh.
That's the first home super saver scheme, absolutely.
If you opt for that scheme, you can use.
Yes, yes.
But do you have to let your super know beforehand, I don't know, time before you actually go in?
What you do is you make extra contributions, right? Your super will see that as an extra contribution. Your super will talk to the MyGov and the ATO. The ATO will flag your extra contributions, and when you go into the MyGov account, what you do is you go to the super, First Home Super Saver Scheme, withdraw funds, and it will tell you how much extra funds you put into your super, right? And then that's how much you can withdraw.
So you can't withdraw the super from your employer?
No, can't. Just the extra funds that you put in. So instead of saving, let's hypothetically say 30K, right? So 30K of post or pre-tax dollars, right? Post-tax, that's worth approximately $20,000, assuming you're getting taxed at 33%, right? $20,000 post-tax. If you go down the path of putting it into super, instead of $20,000, you're basically in your pocket for your deposit, right? You can pull out as much as what's that, 3, 4.5. So you're looking at $25,500 that you can pull out. So $5,000 difference per person.
Is that
Right.
just for brand new houses or
No.
is that a separate scheme?
Established houses and brand new. So you can double dip First Home Super Saver Scheme and Super Saver Scheme and First Homeowners Grant if you want to. If you want to. But I've got a slide a little bit later that'll talk about First Homeowners Grant as well. All right.
Can I ask too, with the first home super saver, when would you, like, I don't see myself buying a home in 2 years, but I would hope to in 5 to 10 years.
Perfect.
Would you say start
Squirreling money away now. Yep.
in
Let's
something like
hypothetically say 5 years,
that?
right?
Yeah.
So 30 divided by 5, $6,000. So what you can do is you can basically say, okay, I'm going to put away $120 per week towards my super, knowing full well that in 5 years' time I'll have $30,000 to pull out. Easy strategy. Save yourself $4,500 of taxes. Pretty solid, right? Good strategy. Because it forces you, as per the cash flow management system, it forces you for a particular goal. Now, if it's a 10-year play, $3,000 per year, that's pretty easy. Right? Something to consider. Access financial advice through super as well. You can get your advice fees paid from super, right? Contributions to build your super balance. Everyone, like I said earlier, gets about 9.5% from their employers. That'll be increasing to 12% in 2021, right? So that's pretty solid. So that'll bolster the super. Government's way of relieving the pressure so that they can get rid of the pension in the future, right? Concessional contribution, this is pre-tax contribution, and then post-tax contributions, right? So for people who've got a bit of cash floating around, and they want to invest it in a tax haven-ish, right? Where they're basically getting minimal amount of tax and they're happy to wait for it in the future, they can put $100,000 per year into their super, post-tax. And if they want to, they can roll it with a bring forward rule, create $300,000 and put it into their super, inject it into their super, and get taxed minimally relative to what they'd be getting taxed at outside. Right? Very powerful strategy for people who've got big lump sums in their pocket. Concessional contribution, this is pre-tax. This is capped at $25,000 per year. If you can do this every single year, you will absolutely kill it in your 60s. But not everyone can afford to put away $10,000 to $15,000 or $20,000, depending on your salaries, right? Towards super that's locked up for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, depending on how old you are, right? Everyone's different. Yes?
How do you know if it's more worth it to put the extra money in the super or to put it like in the mortgage or what's the right
More slides. Like the question. We'll cover more of that later. Yeah, because it's a common question, right? So you got to ask yourself, well, what's the goal? What are you trying to achieve? How does it look on a timeline? Is it too much of a pain in the ass to put it away for 30 years? Most of us will say yes. It depends on your circumstance. If you're nearing 60, and if you're looking to pull some money out, maybe it's worthwhile to load up on it. Just a option, right? So you got to consider what your options are. So this is how it looks, the risk-free return strategy, where you're basically investing, putting money into super rather than putting it into your pocket. $10,000 going into your pocket at a marginal tax rate of 32.5, you're basically putting $6,750 in your pocket with $10,000 pre-tax income, right? If you put that into your super, you're basically putting $8,500 in your super's pocket, i.e. your pocket, but you can't access it for quite some time. That's the only issue. Gaining you 17.5% risk-free. That's the power of this one. An extra $1,700 per year if you put $10,000 towards super. Very powerful strategy, but it's locked up. Yes?
I heard a thing that you can talk to your super and you can get money back in your bank account from the money you put into super. Like,
After tax.
After tax?
After tax.
Okay.
Yes, after tax, not before tax.
Okay. Carry on.
Yep. Yeah. So after tax, you've already paid tax on it, so you can invest it wherever you want, essentially. First Home Super Saver Scheme, we just talked about that, $15,000. So this is what we currently have. There's been some proposals where this may change into the future. So keep an eye on that if you're looking to capitalize on this. But as of today, $15,000 is the maximum that you can put in towards this scheme this financial year. This may change into the future. It could be $10,000 per year over a four-year period, $40,000 max, right? But we'll see what happens with the changes in the future. Staying within your contribution caps of $25,000 per year, right? So maximum you can put in per year is $15,000, minimum as low as you want, right? But the key is to put some money away so that you can actually save up for that deposit. Yep, saving you the difference between your marginal tax rate and the 15% tax within your super, saving you that $2,200 up to $4,500 for the full strategy per person, basically. So if it's a couple looking to buy their first home, you're looking at $9,000 tax savings over a 2 financial year period. You can straddle that over a 3 or 4 month period, i.e. May to August, right? Because you're working with 2 financial years. Pull it out in September, off you go, buy that house in October. One strategy. Eligibility must be your first home. You shouldn't have any kind of homes that you've bought in the past. That's the key kicker for this one. So if you've had a home, unfortunately, you can't do it.
You could have rented.
Absolutely, renting is different to owning. Yes.
What about a de facto couple, let's say?
Mm-hmm.
One has a home, one doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
What's the deal there?
Yes. Well, the one that doesn't have a home can go for their first home.
Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yes.
You're right.
Oh. I know a friend that would ask that same question too. So yeah. Risk profile within superannuation. So everyone's different. I'm sure you would have seen conservative, balanced, aggressive, or growth kind of investors. Everyone's got super here, yeah? Yeah. So you know, are you currently getting statements from your super on a year-to-year basis? Fantastic. Good.
Am I paying attention to them?
Yeah, most people don't really. But the key is to run this exercise through. Understand what kind of investor you are within the superannuation framework, right? And how it works is that you've got a risk profile questionnaire. Just Google it. Look up Morningstar risk profile. Right? That'll give you a generic risk profile questionnaire to find out what kind of investor you should be, right? Run through the questionnaire. Yeah. Invest according to how comfortable you are and when you plan to change your strategy, right? How does it work? It gives you a percentage of defensive assets versus a percentage of growth assets, right? Defensive assets is cash and fixed income, i.e. the funds or the assets, i.e. the investments that you're making, that'll produce an interest payment, right? Interest coupons. It doesn't go up nor down, right? So lower risk. That's the defensive asset classes. Now the growth asset class or the aggressive asset classes produce rent and dividends, but also go up with capital growth and go down. Right? So this is the riskier asset class. And everyone's risk profile is different across all supers. Right? So the key things to consider is what kind of percentage your defensive assets are at and what kind of growth assets. Because a balanced investor in Sun Super is different to a balanced investor in Rest. Right? Two different super funds, two different investment mandates, two different styles of investing. So if you're comparing apples with apples, always know what percentages are invested in defensive asset versus growth asset. The balance or growth investor are different for each individual superannuation account or fund. So you need to just consider that when you're making decisions. Yeah. So ask yourself, what kind of risks are you willing to take? Because you've got a longer time frame or a shorter time frame, depends what you're trying to achieve with your money, right? So ask yourself that thing, because if you're looking to retire soon, what you want to do is potentially be a little bit more risk averse. Instead of putting 100% of your money in here, maybe 50% of your money in here, 50% of your money in here. Obviously, it depends on everyone's situation, how much capital they've got in their super, right? To make these decisions. Key takeaways. Your capital is stuck until preservation age. A lot of rules to stay on top of, legislation, risk, and knowledge provides comfort, right? Tactics to consider, make contributions, review your investment risk profile and insurances, first home super saver scheme, access financial advice through super. Property. Last topic before we finish up. How are we looking for time, by the way? All good? 6:30? Easy, cool. So we'll have some time for Q&A as well. So property, why property? If you want to look up I've put out a YouTube video. I just presented at the Australian Property Expo 2 weeks ago. So that's about a 28-minute, 30-minute video about property. 10 tips to save you 10 years in property. Feel free to watch that. There's a little bit of that covered in this one as well. So the key is to kind of get educated around this thing because it provides you massive flexibility with your finances into the future. Okay, so the key here is to use all of your resources available to you, right? To find the low-hanging fruit to get the best outcome for yourself financially, right? Like I said before, save more, reduce taxes, invest better. Property allows you to do a lot of these things. That's why I'm not afraid to invest in property because I think it's very, very powerful. Too easy. Very, very powerful asset to have in your portfolio, yeah? The key takeaway is to understand that your borrowing capacity is a very, very powerful resource for yourself. Do not ignore it because it is the catalyst, in my opinion, to get you to millions of dollars a hell of a lot faster. Right? So you got to get it right. Borrowing capacity is a resource. A lot of people ignore this thing. A lot of people say all debt is bad. Not necessarily the case. You need to understand what the difference is between good debt and bad debt. Ultimately, bad debt is debt that is associated with something that will never grow in value, right? So if you take a credit card or a personal loan to invest in something, i.e. a holiday to Europe, for example, will it grow in value? Maybe in your mind, fond memories, but in your bank account, I'm sorry, no, you're putting yourself in a hole, right? So that's bad debt. Cars, right? Drops in value, obviously different kind of cars. Most cars will drop in value, right? So if you're getting debt associated with a car, guess what? You're losing money on that transaction. And you're using a resource up that you could be using to put towards an asset that will grow exponentially in value, like property, the right ones. And that's the key. Control versus ownership is a big one that I love talking about, right? Most people are hell-bent on owning their property. I'm hell-bent on controlling all the upside. Let me say that again. Most people are hell-bent on owning the property outright, i.e. paying the banks, because all debt is bad in their mind. So I like to push the boundaries a little bit. Back to my scientific roots, I look at the best case scenario, worst case scenario, and I try and risk mitigate all of the worst case scenarios, and you come up with something that makes absolute sense, right? If you can get all of the upside by controlling the downside, right, of property, why do you need to own it outright? Why do you need to pay the banks off? I don't know. I'm really comfortable with debt.
So you don't know what the interest rate will be like?
That's one risk. Absolutely. That's one risk. So you got to be comfortable with the interest rates increasing the rates increasing, which increases your repayments in the future, right? But you got to ask yourself, as an investor, if your return on investment is higher than the historic lows that we're currently getting, right? Why would you be putting it towards a debt, right? At let's say 3.2%, 2.7%, some of the better banks out there at the moment, right? Why would you be putting it towards that when you can be getting 10% return, 12% return, 20% return on your investment, right? So you're putting money towards a 2.5% return versus a potential 10, 8, 15, whatever kind of return. It makes sense to go for the bigger return. Most people go down this path because that's all they know, paying down their debt, which is fine. It's just a 40-year, 30-year strategy. I'm all about speeding up the process of replacing your income faster, right?
It's 12%.
Another slide. Oh my gosh, we're on a roll here, aren't we? This is awesome. Cool. Okay, so speed up buying one or more properties, right? The key to this thing is to understand what this particular thing is, which is another slide in the future. So you want to get to a stage where you're tapping into the leapfrog strategy, where the properties pay for itself, property grows, and it allows you to leapfrog and buy another one. And it grows and it allows you to buy another one, and it just keeps self-perpetuating, and it grows for you as a beast on the sideline, right? It's about understanding how you structure this thing, right? So to speed up buying your property, these are the ports of call that I always try and tap into. The first thing, you obviously need to have an income, right? Next thing, what I always ask is, how are your parents looking? Do they have a house, right? Are they looking to sell within the next 3 to 5 years? Because if they're not, maybe they would consider becoming a guarantor for you. That's one option. If that's not an option, we look at the lowest deposit possible, right? Most people will tell you to put how much % deposit down? Any more? Anything else that you've heard? 20, yes. A lot of people will ram down the idea of 20% or more because you're saving lender's mortgage insurance, right? LMI. Well, I'm inclined to sort of fight against it, because if that property that you're looking to buy today is $500,000 and it takes you 5 years to save up 20% deposit, that $500,000 property may be $700,000 in 5 years' time. How are you going to feel about saving an extra, what's that, $14,000 more? So you keep chasing your tail, and then suddenly you're not in the property market, you're absolutely priced out. So I'm inclined to pull the trigger, right? Pull the lever as early as possible. So I will happily, and I've recently had some clients who just bought up their first property at a 5% deposit. Yes, they've had to pay lender's mortgage insurance. Yes, it's a high investment repayment, but it allows them to control all of the upside of the property. Now, if you buy the right property, the property may grow in value at 3 to 5 to 6% per year, right? And the return on investment will be absolutely massive, which we'll go over on the next slide before you ask me the question. So pre-approval, post-research, first home super saver scheme if you're looking to buy your first home. So tapping into all of these things, don't buy new, right? Very, very important. Do your research and play the macro and micro game well, right?
Why don't buy
I like the question. There'll be another slide for that. Oh my gosh, we are on a roll about that one. Calculating growth ROI for property, right? So this is the growth paradox, right? In property. If you're looking to buy a $500,000 property, if it doubles over a 15-year period, i.e. grows at 4.72%, which is not far-fetched, happens all the time, right? A lot of properties have doubled in 7 to 10 years, right? We're looking at 15 years and potentially even 20, so be a little bit more conservative when you're projecting out, right? If you put 100% down on the $500,000 property, ignoring all of the income, you've basically gotten yourself 4.72% compounding on a year-to-year basis on this particular investment. Now, what if you put 20% deposit down, right? 100K to control $500,000 worth of property. That property grows to $1 million over a 15-year period. Your initial $100,000 out-of-pocket expense made you 12.68% return on investment, right? Next one, 10% deposit, $50,000. You're getting 17.33% return on investment on controlling all of the upside of that property, providing that you can afford the deficit on the cash flow side of things, right? Very, very important point. 5% deposit, 25K. Upside of 22.5% return on investment, right? So what you need to consider as an investor is this thing called the rule of 72, right? The rule of 72 states how long it will take for you to double your money. If, for example, your return on investment is 7.2%, what you do is you go 72 divided by 7.2% equals 10 years. So it will take you 10 years to double your money if you're getting a 7.2% return. If you're getting a 22.5% return, you're doubling your money every how many years? Less than 4 years. Imagine if you got in at 100% deposit, no deposit. Imagine if you put $5,000 down to control all the upside of this property. This is a strategy that I help one of my clients with, and that property has grown in value. And he's gotten a skyrocketing 1,000% on his investment, right? On $5,000. Very powerful stuff if you know the rules, right? I will happily go over this stuff with you again if you tell Sunny about, sitting down and running these workshops. I will happily run this through, right, and run through case studies and stuff, right? So really, the key to this thing is to get as high a return on investment as possible, to double your money as fast as possible, to ensure that you hit your capital goals as per the initial capital goals that we set for ourselves, the survive, strive, thrive numbers, right? In a time frame that's not 40 or 50 or 60 years, right? We're talking a reasonably faster time frame. That's the key to strategy with your finances, right? If you can structure it properly, you can speed up the process dramatically and actually get to your financial goals a hell of a lot faster. So leapfrog strategy, right? Most people aren't aware that you can do this. So what you can do is actually, let's hypothetically say you've got a house and you've got a loan of $300,000, right, on it, and your house is worth $600,000. What happens is, over that time, actually let's change the numbers a little bit. Here's one I prepared earlier. A home of $850,000 and a loan of $300,000. Well done, you've done really, really well, right? So you've got equity of $550,000 in the house, right? Sitting there, doing nothing, because you're still controlling all of the upside. What you can do as an option is to get a top-up loan or a cash-out loan up to 80% loan-to-value ratio. The banks will lend up to 80% all day long, depending on your income levels, because they're very, very comfortable with you defaulting and them selling it off in a fire sale because they've got 20% of buffer in their back pocket. So the banks are there to make their money and to cover their backsides. 80% is the sweet spot for them. So with this particular scenario, let's hypothetically say, you can actually pull out of that $850,000 home, you can pull out $380K, right? At a cost of capital of approximately 3.2%, let's hypothetically say, right? So now the question that I ask for you as an investor is, can you get a return on investment that's higher than the cost of 3.2%? Because if you can, guess what? You're in business, aren't you? Right? From the previous one, if you can get 4.2%, so $380,000, let's hypothetically say, if you buy a $380,000 house, you're getting 4.72%. Plus, you're getting an income. So you're way and truly ahead. What if you leverage it out a little bit more and get 17.33% over a 15-year period, right? I haven't even gone over the 1-year return on investment yet, because that stuff will blow your mind. I don't even want to get into that. Yes,
So
question.
that orange box, the cash out loan,
Yes.
is that referring to the redraw component?
You can refinance and get a redraw facility. Yeah. So what you can do is, so redraw is what you have available at the moment, right? So some people will have a redraw that's massive. Some people will have a redraw of $300. It depends on the circumstance. But if your current loan is $300,000 and your value of the property is $850, let's hypothetically say, what you can do is you get a loan, an extra loan of $680,000 tops, park the $380,000 in a redraw facility, right? Or an offset account so that you're not paying any excess interest, right? Make a decision on what you want to do with your life. Make a decision what you want to do with your extra cash that you can pull out. Please do not go to the casino with it. Or buy a car, or go on an expensive holiday to Europe, unless of course you're adamant about that and you put your cash flows towards something like that, right? So what you can do is you can provide yourself with a whole range of options that you otherwise wouldn't have. The key is to get a return on investment higher than the repayments that you'd have to make. That's the key, to risk mitigate the strategy against the strategy. Right.
Would it be better, is there a difference whether you take it out from your regular account or the redraw?
Depends on how big the redraw is. If the redraw is enough to allow you to do what you want to do next, take it out of the redraw. You don't need to get a cash out loan, right? So what you can do, where I'm going with this thing is that you can borrow up to 80% quite easily, right? Most of the time on the house that you have the option to have the orange part available to you, can be parked in a specific account that offsets the repayments, i.e. in a redraw, right? Or an offset account, right? Waiting for an example, a hypothetical, for the market to crash. If another GFC hits and you've got this much ammunition or gunpowder ready to deploy, right? You could go to war and win, right? Because if the GFC hits, and let's hypothetically say we're in 2008, what you can do is you can invest $50,000 into the stock market that's crashed 50% in 2009 or in 2010, right? You can put another 50K in 2011, another 50K in 2012, dollar cost average up and gain 50% returns, right? From this thing. It depends what you're after. There are a whole range of options basically, but having the option to do something is much more powerful than having this particular circumstance where you're sort of stuck going, when the hell am I going to pay this thing off because I'm really obsessed about paying it off, right? Depends what you're trying to do. Everyone's different. So I'm just here to kind of challenge the dogma a little bit, right? Don't buy new. So the idea here is to get to your survive, strive, thrive numbers, right? What you want to do is, most people unfortunately are on this red line here. So this is what they own. This is the savings that they have. This is most likely their super because they can't touch it. Most people have spent all of their savings, right? It's gone. They've got massive holes in their pockets. They don't have a cash flow management system as per what we talked about, right? Therefore, the red line is their superannuation account. The people who are really, really good savers have this particular line right here, right? It'll take them 30, 40 years to get there, but they will get their survive income or maybe strive. Definitely not the thrive income goal. The people who are a little bit more strategic are the ones that considered what their options are and taken on a little bit more risk, assuming that they're comfortable with it and they understand what the whole story is, right? So they move forward with confidence and they lift off. The hardest part in finance is the lift off, right? Because as you can see here in the first year, there's not much difference between red line, blue line, and green line. Like if you were to hit a golf ball, right? 1 degree difference is nothing in the first 5 to 10 meters. But over a 100, 200, 300 meter length, there's a massive difference, right? 1 degree. So that's the key. So if you're consistent with your actions, if you can save more, lower your taxes and invest better on a year-to-year basis, you get the lift off and you speed up the process, because what you're doing is saving yourself time. Because let's hypothetically say your thrive income is 150, Strive is 100, Survive is 50. If you can save yourself 1 year of your Survive income, that's $50,000 in your pocket. What if you can save yourself 10 years? $500,000 in your pocket. What if you never get there and you actually get there? That's $50,000 in perpetuity. That's the power of getting it right. Right? So just got to be consistent with this thing. Right? Now, why don't you buy new? Because new are designed to give you massive tax incentives. The government will dangle a massive first homeowners grant carrot in your face, right? $15,000. But what you're doing, what you're not realizing is it'll take you 7 to 10 years for that particular property to catch up. Because what's happening is you're buying at, if this is the number of sales and this is the price range within a suburb, when you're buying new, you're buying at the top of the market, top of the suburb. In an ideal world, if you're buying property, you want to buy at or below median price because it's safer, right? When you're buying new, it's always above. Therefore, for the market to catch up, it takes 7 to 10 years, right? So $15,000 now equates to 7 to 10 years of not hitting your goal faster. I don't know about you, $15,000 is a hell of a lot less than $50,000 times 7, $350,000 on the most basic goal. What if you're a little bit more ambitious and you want to hit your Thrive goal or your Strive goal? $700,000, $15,000? No, makes sense to not go there because the problem with new is that it gives you, yes, it gives you massive tax incentives. Yes, it gives you a first homeowners grant, but it's not going to move. It's not going to increase in value. That's why you want to buy property, right? You're paying a premium. Whose margins are you paying? Whose profits are you paying for when you buy new? You got the developer at around 20 to 40% margin, right? Profit. You got the builder, 10 to 20 to 30% that you have to pay for. You got the marketer, right? That markets the property. Then you've got the real estate agent. You got to pay for all of them living, right? Because we're all got to make a living, right? Unfortunately, they've got to make their living. And as an investor, if you're buying new, guess what? You're paying for their lunches, aren't you? So what I would be suggesting you do is not pay for other people's lunches and just put the money in your pocket, right? So it's a bit controversial when I kind of when I talk about these things, but when I kind of lay it out on the line like that, it just makes sense, you know. So don't buy new if you can. Now, if you're looking to build, and if you've got a builder in your pocket, you get rid of the developer, you get rid of the marketer, you get rid of the agent, and the builder is a good friend of yours and will happily give you a cost and not make a profit out of the deal, maybe it's worthwhile. So never say never, just break it down to the most basic fundamentals and make sure you make the right decision for you and your circumstance. Understand that the opportunity cost is this. Every single year you don't hit your Survive, Strive, Thrive numbers, it's costing you your Survive, Strive, Thrive numbers, right? So on the back end of your investment career, every single year you get there faster, you will be making your particular goals. It's really as simple as that. Property sweet spot is 80% loan to value ratio, i.e. a $500,000 property with a $400,000 loan. In an ideal world, if that gets to $600,000, you want a $480,000 loan on that because the return on investment just amplifies over time. You can pull out the money to reinvest again, and it becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy with the leapfrog strategy here, right? It grows, it grows, it grows, it grows. And then you get to a stage where you don't need to make it grow anymore because you're trending towards hitting your Survive, Strive, Thrive numbers. You slow down, you become a little bit more conservative, right? And then you sail off into the sunset and pick whatever career, whatever job, stay within your job, whatever it may be, pursue the passions that you have in your life, right? That's what you ultimately want. You want freedom to do what you want, when you want, with whomever you want. That's my definition of financial freedom. So property sweet spot, if it doesn't cost you anything to hold on to, all you're getting is the massive upside, right? So 80% loan to value ratio, neutrally geared, where it's not making you money or it's not losing you money on a year-to-year basis, very possible to do. If you buy an investment property, it usually takes about 7 years to get to that place where it's neutrally geared, right? In the meantime, if there's a deficit, i.e. it's costing you $3,000 to $5,000 per year to hold on to, that's tax deductible. A bigger tax return, bit of a discount to hold on to the property for the opportunity of massive growth into the future, right? Buy below median. Understand that your cost of capital has to be lower than your return on investment, right? That's the key. If it's costing you 3% per annum and if you can get 5, you're ahead. But if you can get 10 or 20 or 50% return on that money, you are way ahead, aren't you? So that's what you got to consider as an investor. No stress, amplified returns, debt and time as allies. This is the big one. Most people have both of these things working against them and they don't realize that they're digging themselves in a hole. And that's me. Any questions? Feel free to connect. I put out a bunch of this stuff. I record all of my presentations and I try and put it all out on the social media platforms and try and educate. Trying to get to 1 million people educated. It's bloody difficult, but you know, one person at a time, right? So I'll take the 7. I'll take the 7 tonight.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Any questions on any of the topics at all?
I would love to go deeper into the early conversations about the savings.
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Yes.
On that stage, we're on the line.
Yeah.
So I need to save more.
Yes, yes. Absolutely.
I'd love
Yeah.
to even mention that to somebody.
Please do, yeah.
To
Yeah, you should. I'll happily run that.
To have an Excel, you said you could
Yes.
forward an Excel sheet.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be a lot.
That would be great.
Yeah, yeah, we'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No issues.
Yeah, that's where my interest is at the moment.
Yeah,
And
no
super,
problem.
knowing more about super.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Whereabouts will we access the video if we want to know our business again?
Just go to Andrew David Courtney. Make sure to like and subscribe.
Yeah.